We have Utopia, we have Tales from Above, we have another body of work that is called Here Nor There, and then we have one single photograph that is called Barcelona. It's different, it's hand-painted silver gelatin. We have 3 more of those. We sold all of them, and this itself is the second edition. It's quite dreamy and magical. You should take a look at it for sure. But as an art historian, what I personally like about Jennifer's work is how she's consistent with the themes that she plays with in her work. In Utopia, as you can, as all of us know from the term utopia, she explores the notion of utopia, and then it actually started with Plato in his dialogue, The Republic, in which he argued that any person that can eliminate poverty, they can become rulers. And that will lead the society to get closer to perfection, to that ideal that we have constructed in our minds, and then it'll lower the number of rules and laws that we have to make in our society. And then later, other philosophers talked about it, and then in the 16th century it was brought up again, and then some artists started to explore it. What I personally like in her work is how she actually manipulates our minds when we look at her work, how she plays with the 2 notions of fact and fiction, how she explores that fine line that actually exists between fact and fiction. Because the correct, maybe, definition of utopia based on Greek definition is that utopia translates into no place, and then now we translate it as a good place. So how it's been interpreted differently, how it's been evolved into this other definition, and how Jennifer plays with it, and what is real was constructed in our minds, then that's why she constructs her own landscapes. She constructs her own images, but these are not sci-fi. These are not really out of our mind. We can relate to them, but still we cannot necessarily attribute them to any specific place. And I think that's the closest of this series of work to Here Nor There, that you can relate to them, but you cannot recognize them necessarily, and therefore they are neither here nor there. And then she has this new body of work that's Tales from the Above. I'm Persian myself, so just growing up with mythology and legendary stories. Every culture has their own myths, but maybe older cultures have a little bit more of those things. So I really like how she also explores that notion, how these myths and legendary stories get passed down to other generations, how we interpret them through the years. So it's been fascinating for me personally to watch Jennifer create her artworks and develop all these fascinating ideas that she's been doing in her artwork. So now, thank you for listening to the synopsis. She's going to tell you more. I would like to ask you to tell us not only about the ideas, but a little bit more about the process, and what is the difference between albumin prints and tone, silver gelatin, and hand-painted ones. So please join me in welcoming Jennifer.
I really appreciate that. She just totally got my work. I've never had anybody really understand my work in such a way, so thank you. That was really exceptional. I think basically I started with albumin. I kind of switch off on process depending on what I'm trying to convey with the work. So the albumin I felt really went well with the idea of sort of that magical, creative kind of imaginary world. And then I switched back to gelatin silver. Actually, Brant, my boyfriend here, had come across some fantastic, for the Tales from Above series, had come across some fantastic glass negatives that I got really inspired by. And this was a negative. There was another one, the Hydra, I think. This one. And I got really inspired by those, and at the same time I was also kind of getting inspired by the constellation stories. And so those two kind of kicked off that series, and I wanted to replicate the feeling that you get when you look at a glass negative. And And so I realized that albumin wasn't going to really work with that because it was too sepia, and went back to gelatin silver because these glass negatives were from the 1800s and very, I wanted to replicate that ultimately. So that's how I went to gelatin silver. And then as far as the hand painting, I had wanted to experiment with hand painting for quite a bit of time, and it never really developed into a full body of work. I just kind of played around with it, and so that's why this one's a little bit more of an anomaly. I only did, I think, maybe 5 hand painted